Why is this year the best time for brands to celebrate Pride? I'm Jeff Beer, and this is Fast Company's Brand Hit or Miss of the Week. This week we have a hit, and it goes to Pride. That's right. As Pride Month kicks off, we find ourselves in a much more politically charged atmosphere than we've seen in years, with a loud social conservative backlash against LGBTQ rights and the brands that voice support. For years now, brands supporting Pride almost seemed quaint. In fact, it was so prevalent that performative rainbow washing seemed to be the biggest problem around the celebration. Now, we find ourselves at a time when 500 anti-LGBTQ bills have been introduced this year alone in American legislatures. Books are being burned. Any discussion of the LGBTQ community or even an association with it is being banned in schools. So, I wanted to take this episode at the beginning of Pride Month to highlight the power and responsibility brands have to help illustrate what equality looks like. When Bud Light did a small March Madness promotion with trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney, the brand was bullied by a backlash and didn't stand up for itself or the community it was originally attempting to connect with. Target scaled back its Pride collection after more social media protests, citing in-store safety concerns for employees. These retreats have only emboldened the protests and boycotts. I spoke to GLAAD president and CEO Sarah Kate Ellis about the challenges of Pride this year, and she told me that they're working really hard to fight the false narratives and rhetoric around the LGBT community, and more specifically the transgender and gender nonconforming community, and that there's no better time than right now for brands to reflect their values. There's also no better business incentive, pointing to studies that show Gen Z's overwhelming support for LGBTQ issues, and that more than half of all adults who identify as LGBTQ are under 35. The smart CEOs understand that their future consumer and employee are going this route, Ellis told me. So whether or not it's being politicized by a handful of politicians who are trying to make a name for themselves and a reputation for themselves right now, that's not a long game. Texas Senator Ted Cruz has bragged about a cumulative effect from campaigns to boycott and damage brands, saying on his podcast that it makes other brands nervous. You know what the next company is going to say? Cruz said, "We don't want to be Bud Light or Target." That starts to get really powerful. Well, the opposite is also true. Brands can push back. Brands like Disney, who's facing off against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis over that state's Don't Say Gay bill, or the North Face, who's come out in stronger support after its Pride campaign that launched last week drew a backlash. Hopefully, more brands will step up and stand out. Oreo has embraced Pride since 2012, and senior brand manager Vishnu Nair tells me it's continuing with its plans this year. Nair told me that the current backlash hasn't impacted how Oreo thinks about its approach to Pride at all. Pride has been a staple on brand marketers' calendar for more than a decade, and there's absolutely no reason why that shouldn't continue. In fact, it's never been more crucial that it does. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. For more Brand Hit or Miss of the Week and other great Fast Company content, hit subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. Pew!